Hi, thank you for your interest in front range dog training. My name is Michael Perry. In this video, I'd like to take you through what our philosophy on dog training is, some of our techniques, and hopefully answer many, if not all, of the questions that you might have about dog training and helping you decide whether working with front range dog training is going to be right for you. So first and foremost, we focus on family dogs. So there are lots of different types of training out there. All different types of training use basically the same behavior modification techniques in a sense. There's only a handful that you can use, but it's sort of how you use them and your mentality and philosophy that's going to determine how the dog is going to turn out psychologically, right? And psychologically is really important. We're really focused on that in our dog training. Teaching a dog commands like sit, down, stay, and come, and having them understand what those things mean is actually very, very easy. Each one of those commands can be taught in 5 minutes or so for them to understand what it is they're supposed to be doing. But we're looking for much more in our training. We're looking for creating calmness, creating a correct relationship. So we call it like a parent-child relationship with your dog. Meaning that not only do they understand what the commands are, but they're willing to do them when you ask you to do them. So there are many dogs, a lot of them come to us after they've gone through sort of the more basic, like all positive, food-based type training. And the dogs know exactly what to do, but they won't necessarily engage in the behaviors unless there's food present. And I think that's not really a great situation. A couple things about it is, when we're talking about strictly food-based training, the dogs are generally going to be really stimulated if the dog is food motivated, right? So they have the big wide eyes and they're very excited and they're almost shaking to do whatever you want them to do. That's not real. Okay, that's a dog that is really just adrenalized, right? And they're super excited for that food. And so they'll do it if the food is out, and there are a lot of clients that will come to me and show me, they say, hey, my dog knows sit, and they'll ask the dog to sit, and the dog will just look at them and not do anything. And if they stick their hand down towards their pocket, the dog immediately sits. Well, we definitely do not want that. So we want our dogs to be able to respond without food. We also look at food as something that stimulates the dog, right? So it gets them excited. Well, that's not the problem that we have with most family dogs, is a lack of excitement. Matter of fact, the issue that we usually run to is overexcitement. Jumping, pulling on the leash, barking, like all these really sort of excessive behaviors. And that's, a lot of it comes from, especially if it's an older dog, it becomes from only having had food used as a reward, and so the dogs are always kind of spinning, and they really don't even know how to calm down. Dogs have both an excitatory and an inhibitory nervous system, just like we do. Matter of fact, there's been a lot of MRI research over the last, going back to like 2012, 2013, where they're taking these dogs and they're having them lie completely motionless in an MRI, and they're able to study their brains in real time. So we've learned so much about how the dog's brains work. And one of the discoveries is the prefrontal area in a dog. And you may be familiar with the prefrontal cortex in a human. It's the part of our brain that is utilized for impulse control. Okay, so it's one of the biggest things that we need to develop in our dog is impulse control. Your dog has a steady stream of information coming up into its brain about what it should be doing at any given moment, right? So dogs have drives and instincts, intelligence, desires, right? They're not goldfish. They're not just swimming in a circle all day. They have things they want to do. And our job in training is to develop enough of that prefrontal area and enough impulse control where even though your dog wants to do something, it can also choose not to do it. Until that prefrontal area is developed, there's no choice. They don't even have the ability or the capacity to restrain themselves from eating the goose poop or chasing the bunny or pulling on the leash towards whatever smells or things that are getting them excited, or jumping on people or whatever it might be. So that's a huge part of our training. Everything that we're doing in our training is about mental and psychological development. The teaching of the actual behaviors of sit, down, stay, come, heel, leave it, whatever commands you want to give is really, really easy. Almost every one of those commands, your dog can get an understanding of it in 5 minutes or so. But getting a dog to be willing to let go of what they want to be doing to do what you're asking them to be doing is everything. And if you have an adult dog, you see this. You see a dog that knows what come means, but when you say it because they're distracted or just because they don't really want to, they don't necessarily respond to it. And that's what our training is designed to address. So we're going to get several things. We're going to get the correct relationship, right? So we want a sort of like a parent-child relationship with our dogs, right? They need to understand that we're going to ask them to do things and they need to do that. And to balance that out, of course, when they do the things that we want, they're going to get an amazing life, right? They're going to get to go hiking with you and be off leash and, go out in public and maybe go to a restaurant or a coffee shop, things like that. And so there's discipline equals freedom, basically is what we say. And so the more well-behaved your dog is, the more rich their experience in life is going to be. So we want that relationship. We want, and we don't have to be alpha, by the way, necessarily like that. At least not like old school. Old school would be, using like physical force and, maybe pinning the dog down and maybe even more as far as like hitting or really yanking the leash and things like that and trying to sort of assert dominance. We don't have to do any of those things. What we typically do is it's more like a staring contest. It's more that we're asking the dog to do something and we're willing to be really patient and persistent in a really easy way and helping the dog figure out how to basically go, okay, I'll do that, right? And so that's what we're trying to establish in the dog, that willingness to let go of what they want to be doing to do what you're asking them to do. So that's number one. Number two, we've kind of talked about, which was impulse control. We need our dogs to be able to do what we're asking, even though they want to be doing something else, right? And that's really every command, all the way from, the ultimate, which is having your dog off a leash and they're, 150 feet away from you and they see a rabbit and they start to run after the rabbit and you say, come. They need to be able to turn off of that and come back to you. And we should expect that. And it's very doable for just about every dog. There's some dogs that have a super high prey drive and they're not really going to be that great off leash to begin with. One example is a husky. They're notoriously difficult to have off leash unless you start them when they're really young with this process. But just about every other dog can do it. And so letting go of their impulses, their drives, their instincts to be able to do what you're asking. Okay. And so that's the impulse control. And then the third piece is the relaxation. We want to teach our dogs how to calm down, how to settle down. And ultimately, as we're doing that, we're taking kind of the top, 10 to 20% of that sort of vibrational energy, and we're just sort of bringing it down. So they're just more stable all around. And they're less likely to sort of shoot into those impulsive type behaviors. And then the fourth piece, which is, it's not really along the same lines as those things, but we want to switch, okay? So we're not trying to train a service dog who never gets excited, never gets interested in anything, but we're also not wanting an agility dog who's always super excited and doesn't even know how to calm down. I want to be able to go between those two, okay? So there's certain situations like being off leash where you want your dog to run and play and chase the butterflies, whatever it might be, although don't chase wildlife. And in other situations where you want to go to the ball field when the kids have a soccer game or go to a restaurant or coffee shop, you want your dog to be able to relax and settle down even with other dogs walking by and it doesn't really matter, right? Or when people come into your home, that they can have a place and a stay and whatever while people come in the door and so forth. And be really relaxed. So I want both of those. We want to maintain the original dog, I say, but add in that ability to switch in and out of different levels of energy, if that makes sense. And so those are all the things we're looking for in training. Now, as far as techniques, we don't want to use pain, punishment, fear, anything like that. Like I said, we use more like a staring contest where we're putting them in positions where they want to do something, you want them to do something else, and we start all this basically with our leash work. And we teach them how to come towards the leash, even though they might want to go towards a smell over there, okay? Everything that we do in the first couple of sessions for an adult dog is really all the most important things. So there's no delay in getting to the heart of the matter. When we're working with puppies, obviously we start off really slow. With our puppies, we're using a lot of positive reinforcement. Matter of fact, even with adult dogs, we're using positive reinforcement. It just changes from food to praise. Really interesting for most people that those are about equal. There's been some MRI research on that. It's on my YouTube channel if you want to check that out. It's about a 2-minute video that just goes over the study that was done, and I believe it was published in the New York Times as long as in some of the journals. But basically, in that MRI study, they found for 13 of the 15 dogs that they studied that food and praise were about equal. Okay, and so the difference between food and praise is food is always going to be excitatory. Praise could be excitatory, right? Come on, oh, good job, yeah. You can get really excited with it, or you could say, good job, and you can be really, really calm with your praise. And so we'd much rather have that. And for multiple reasons. One is that ability to adjust the excitement or the calmness in the praise, but also more that it's about you. I want you to be the thing that your dog is doing it for, not this little piece of tidbit in your fingertips, right? And so when we talk about relationship, that's really important. So I want the good feelings and the positive reinforcement to come from you and the bond between you and your dog, not your dog's bond with food, if that makes sense, okay? And so that's what we're doing. We're using positive reinforcement. We're getting the dog to engage in behaviors. In the puppy sessions, we're starting with things like, obviously, what we call marker training, like sits and downs and come and things like that. We want to start those really, really early. With our adult dogs, our dogs are a little bit older, we're starting with leash work. We're starting with how to walk on a leash calmly, how to connect with the handler, the person who's holding the leash, and not just be pulling away and going and sniffing and zigzagging all over. And then with the adult dogs, we're also working on a stay command right away, okay? So both the leash work and the stay command are what we call continuation commands. And what that means is the dog has to engage in a behavior that they have to remain in for a period of time, like a heel or a stay. And that really develops that prefrontal area, the ability for them to control themselves over a period of time. Now with puppies, they don't have that. They don't have the ability to do any of that until, at very minimum, starting around 12 weeks, that we're starting to put them in positions where they need to control their impulses. Up to that point, we're actually utilizing food and excitement and praise to start to teach them some patterns and some behaviors that we're going to build upon later on in the training. But somewhere in that 12 to 14 week area, we're going to begin that transition from only food and excitement to starting to do it for the praise and starting to be a little more calm with their behaviors. So there's a whole progression through there. Talking about puppies, when we have puppies, we like them also to come to our puppy club socialization class. So those are held twice a week. Currently, one of them is on Thursday nights at 6 p.m. in Erie, and the other is on Saturdays at noon at my location here in South Boulder. So the one in Erie is held at one of the vet clinics in Erie at Foxtail Pines. We've been doing that one for many years together. And then the other one on Saturdays is at my location in South Boulder. So that's part of the program because with our puppies, as we move along, we're spreading those sessions out at least about every 2 weeks. And so that we can match the puppy's development. We don't want to give them things they're not ready to handle yet, and we don't want to be lagging behind too much, and 2 weeks seems to be a pretty good rhythm for most puppies to get through the process. And that would be assuming starting in the 9 to 10 week range. If your puppy's a little bit older, we might do a couple sessions right away, back to back, maybe once a week, 2 in a row or something, just to kind of catch up with everything that your puppy's able to do at that age. For the adult dogs, we can go anywhere from 1 to 2 weeks apart in our sessions. Total number of sessions, people always ask. It's really hard to say. For puppies, you should expect at least 6 sessions. And then for adult dogs, it's probably somewhere in the same range, depending on what type of issues we might have as far as behavioral issues that we're trying to rectify and what your ultimate goals are as far as being off leash and so forth. So with the adult dogs, there's more of like a turning around process within it, where with a puppy, you're sort of starting with the blank slate and you can sort of move them along pretty easily. If you have any questions after watching this video, please feel free to shoot me a text or email. Text actually works better if that works for you, and I'd be happy to set up a brief call with you to answer specific questions about your dog and maybe what your goals are in training. All right, well, thanks for watching, and I hope to hear from you.